So my talk is on ducks or rabbits, depending on which one you would like to see. Hello, this is not working now. Now it's dramatic. This was just working.
The stubborn duck rabbit.
All right, I'll just do it that way. So I know a lot of people were expecting chess or something like that. I figured if I did a talk on chess, you guys would get better, and that would just be bad for me, so I skipped that. But I'm doing something else that kind of just like a hobby or an interest of mine since I've been a kid. Optical illusions kind of always fascinated me, and so I kind of took this opportunity to learn about them a little bit. And
Can you turn down the lights, or?
yeah, you could turn them down a little. That's probably okay. But so just use the opportunity to share with you guys, what I found out and some really interesting tidbits and facts. This particular one is called Three Faces, and if you haven't figured it out, there's three faces somewhere in those contour lines that are stacked together. It's I don't remember the source where this one comes from, but it's basically just an example of how your mind can shift the perspective on different things. The history of optical illusions really is not much. There were these two guys, ancient Greeks, Epicharmus and Protagoras, first commented on something like illusion. So Epicharmus basically said, it's our senses that are not good, right? Our mind sees things and hears things, and the rest of the world is blind and deaf. And Protagoras said, you're dumb, our bodies are fine, it's the environment that messes up the illusions. And we find that when we investigate these things, it's actually both. And that's what Aristotle said. Basically, our senses can be trusted but easily fooled. And that's where we kind of started out with all this. So the first type of optical illusion is physical optical illusions. These are illusions we kind of experience every day. The world can kind of manipulate things in a way that distorts the way we see them with our senses. So obviously this one is a boat floating above the horizon, and then this is an illusion of refraction with looking through the water and the plane of the water. It's not anything that's happening with your senses. Your senses are fine. This is because cold and hot air are bending the light to change the way that the image is being sent to your eyes, through your eyes to your brain. So other examples of this are like flashes after cameras and things like that. And these are not as fun as some of the other ones, but they're still good to know about. This is also an illusion that's happening right now with the world on your senses. It's not anything that's wrong with your senses, but it's the fact that you guys have these, as I think John said, these receptors in your eyes that are being fired whenever you try to focus on one of the white dots, or when you try to focus on one of the gray dots in this grid. It's called the Hermann grid. You'll find that it disappears as you try to move your eye around and track it. The other thing that's happening here, this is kind of really useful in design, is it's called color pull. And that gradient does appear to have, or those colors appear to have a gradient in them, but they actually don't. Those are all solid bars. And it's the proximity of the color next to a shade of lighter or darker that has that effect on your eyes. So these are also, it's called lateral inhibition, where the light and dark receptors in the eyes compete with one another. This one's pretty crazy. It's also a physical illusion. So I know you might not see it, but square A and square B are actually the same color. You can take this into Photoshop, you can crop the squares and you'll see that they're the same color. Our visual system is trying to compensate when we're presented with a three-dimensional space. So we have this sort of built-in mechanism where we try to make sense of a space and objects, and the shadow is kind of throwing off our perception on that. So we have this need to determine color where we're not light meters, we're trying to make sense of situations instead of actually reading at what they do. This kind of connects the squares so you can sort of see, although it looks like there's a gradient in between, there's really not. And this one, these are actually the same color squares going through, so kind of highlight that for you a little bit. The next type of illusions are cognitive illusions. Cognitive illusions rely on stored knowledge about the world, and these are the ones where you can kind of reverse the image in your head. This is the most common one. It's called a Necker cube. And the illusion here is that you can change the way you're looking at it so that the plane of the cube shifts from up to down, or the perspective changes on it. This particular image here obviously looks like a skull, probably more from far away for you, but it's really a woman looking in a mirror, putting on makeup and things like that. That's from Charles Allen Gilbert. He's an artist, and that's titled All is Vanity. So there's types of cognitive illusions. This one is called a distorting cognitive illusion. These cars are all actually the same size. If you were to get up and measure it, it's the perspective of the road that makes your mind think that the cars change in size as they get closer to you. This is due to linear perspective, and there's something called the Ponzo illusion, which is where you have railroad tracks and a line on the top and the bottom. So those things kind of all force your head to do crazy things. This is also related to why the moon looks so much bigger when it's at the horizon instead of when it's in the sky. Jeep did an ad campaign recently that was also based off this distortion illusion, where they did these sketches of animals that are essentially, when you rotate them, are a totally different animal. This one here is an elephant and ostrich. They have a few other ones. So this is really interesting to see like this type of visual illusion sort of moving into that space of advertising. This particular illusion shows something called an ambiguous illusion. And what you're seeing here is two shapes that are the same but look different, and two shapes that look the same but are different. Those are called metamers. The ones that are metamers look the same but aren't, and they're called antimetamers if they don't look the same but are. And they're both combined in this illusion, so you can see, which road. Right now, the two on the right are the actual same, but when they're like that, they appear different. This was one that kind of tripped me out for a while. It's a spinning dancer. Most people see the dancer spinning initially one way. How many people see it spinning to the right? Do you guys? And how many people see it spinning to the left? So it's kind of pretty much split. You guys all have the ability, believe it or not, to make it spin any way you want. And if you stare at it long enough and you kind of force yourself to change perspective. The reason why this is happening is that there's no depth cues. So you can totally take this and reverse it either way. This was posted, I think, initially as like a right brain, left brain myth, a left brain thing, where if you see it spinning to the left, your right brain, blah, blah, blah. It's a myth. Don't believe it. That's all I'm going to say. And this was actually created by a web designer, so kudos for the designer. Another type of cognitive illusion is called paradox, and these are pretty common. They're just impossible shapes. This one's called the Penrose Triangle. It's the most famous. There's also Penrose Stairs, which were the inspiration for M.C. Escher's Cayman and Dallin, Ascending and Descending Staircase. So that's kind of just interesting and insightful. He picked up on that for some of his art. And then there's a fourth type, which I wasn't going to talk about, but I decided I would, and it's fictional. This is related to mental disorders, schizophrenia, things like that. So if you ever see something like this, if I ever say this to you, that means I'm having an optical illusion based off of a fictional stimulus, in case you didn't get that. So all these things are pretty cool, but what I really liked about these illusions was how they stem more into our everyday life and our cognitive abilities. Some of you might be familiar with this. You're basically supposed to count how many times the white team passes the ball. This is from a study that was done in the late 90s by this guy, Chris Chabris and Daniel Simons. And they wrote this book called The Invisible Gorilla. And that's not playing. There we go. So feel free to count while I'm talking, but they kind of outlined their natural cognitive biases in terms of how we perceive information. So do your best to try to concentrate. If you guys already saw this, don't spoil it for anybody else. But they have basically 6 types of cognitive disorders that we all kind of experience and suffer from. This is the illusion of attention, illusion of memory, illusion of confidence, the illusion of knowledge, and illusion of cause and of potential. So this is going to keep playing. And by the time this is over, you should be able to answer the question right about now. Did you guys see 16? Who counted 16? Okay. And if you counted 16, did you see the gorilla, the guy in the gorilla suit, come out in the middle? Everybody? Okay, so I bet you didn't notice, if you did see the gorilla, that the curtain changed color and that one of the black team members also left. So this is kind of going to illustrate the point. I can rewind it for you. I can play it out. Just how we have it. It's called inattentional blindness, where we're tasked with doing something, and we're so focused on trying to achieve that task that we lose sight of maybe some other things that might surprise us or that we might need to pay attention to. And the application for this is obviously we don't want to be texting while driving is the biggest one. But that's that myth of multitasking and that sort of thing is just being aware helps us understand better what's going on. So if you want to see it again. Yeah, so there's the gorilla and there's the curtain change.
Just walk straight in the middle.
Yeah, and then one of the team members just walked off right there.
Oh, there goes the curtain.
So 2 team members and that's that. The last one is from the same book. They did this other study called the door study, and this was due to something called change blindness, where we basically don't pay attention maybe to certain cues or things in our environment that we should. Again, while we're tasked with something, maybe find another mouse. So I'll just play this for a little bit. So they basically did this study where they asked people for directions, and they staged a plant where they would walk by. 2 people holding a door would walk in between the 2 people who one was giving the directions, one was asking. And while the door passed in between, the guy who was asking for directions would grab the door, and when the last doorman would basically pick up where they left off. And about half the people in this study didn't even realize what had happened. So you'll see this happen right here. So basically, again, this is called change blindness. We don't really know what's going on. They did find out that in this particular situation, if the person changed sex or if the person changed race, that they did pick up more often on that drastic of a change. But if they were similar build, similar race, similar and same sex, it was 50% of the time they didn't really do that. So anyway, to kind of close this out, who cares, right? Generally speaking, after reading that book, Invisible Gorilla, we can trust our senses, but knowing our limitations helps us avoid mistakes in how we approach solving problems and what we're paying attention to in our everyday experiences. And for me personally, I just find it interesting that the same data, the same information from so many people can be processed very differently. And it kind of changes how we think about ourselves, how we think about others, and helps us to kind of temper our reactions when we find people that don't agree with us or vice versa. So that's it.